transmission or activation or download or something with this 777 gateway. And Morgan and I were talking about some things that have been going on. And she's had some personal experiences like she does and those like her. So it'll be interesting to see how many people are, coming up with this similar information. This 777 gateway is huge, no doubt about it. But I think we'll jump right into it and just kind of go over the things that she experienced. And I don't know where you want to start, honey. If you want to, where you want to start with this, of what happened a few days ago up to what happened today.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've just been talking because I'm actually driving down to Brisbane. I've pulled over just before I arrived to actually share this because I'm not available at all for the rest of the day and probably tomorrow. But I was telling you about this gateway and what I understand that, what's on offer for us all, and telling you about my experiences. And I think just through talking about it out loud, like understanding how huge this is at the moment. I've only got 2 bars, so I can't put my camera on because I lose you. But so, for the last few weeks, actually, it's been building all year. I had to give up dairy in January because I was very naughty and just lived on chocolate milk more than anything else. I'm not a massive fan of food. Chocolate milk and chocolate, ice cream, yogurt, all those sorts of things. Had to give that up because of very high cholesterol. About 6-7 weeks ago, I was guided to give up sugar. It's probably my second poison. And about 2 weeks ago, I was guided to just get off it, not completely delete the count, but stay off it for a while. And I could start feeling like the changes, the themes of, letting the addictions or the attachments go. It's just been huge. But I did a session a few days ago, and within that session, entities presented themselves, and the power that these entities have, and they're harvesters that actually harvest energy from us. So the big one that came up on that day, when it was asked what its name was, it came back Nephilim. I was a bit confused at the time because I don't know much about this stuff, but Nephilim I thought was like Elohim or some of those really high frequency Christ type energies. But this entity came before me, and it explained to me that it's getting tired, that their time is almost done, that it was actually playing a role to limit and repress the human, to harvest energy and power from the human, and to prevent the human from seeing and knowing their own true light. It was mind-blowing. Like all this energy came up to the top of my head. I could feel this thing, as I'm talking to it, lovingly letting it go, setting it free, because it was a contract between the two of us. This essence told me that that it was part of a network, and that it was time. Like it was tired. It had had enough of the role, that it was a two-way street, and it actually wanted to be released. After that session, I actually looked up Nephilim to see what it was about. And oh my goodness, on Ascension Glossary, when you look that up, it explained all of it, how it actually robbed us of that creation energy from our sexual energy, how it comes into the brain, and actually, when you want to give something up and you say, okay, that's it, I'm not going to eat any more chocolate from tomorrow onwards. And by 11 o'clock you go, oh my God, I want some chocolate. The Nephilim explained to me that what they actually do is they implant a thought, I'll just have one, it'll be okay. So they're constantly there to sabotage you. So I don't know, do you want me to go on? Do you want to ask anything? Or
well, I just want to kind of restate some stuff to make sure we cover it. A couple of things. One is obviously many people will know the Nephilim's referred to in the Bible and other sacred texts under different names in other sacred texts. and these were the offspring of, and again, metaphorically speaking or not, of the fallen angels having sexual congress with the human women. And so, just recently, we put a lot of pieces together, and one of those things was, some of the experiences that you've had or I've had that we put together, or together we had, where that was the original point of corruption, and it occurred by the physical intercourse of these higher beings that were basically the watchers that came down and copulated with the women, and then started to bear these offspring, which were the Nephilim. And so, there's some evidence there of that. And then I think the other thing that I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood from what you had said is that this Nephilim network was all over the globe, all in our DNA, and has been with us for, I think you said, hundreds of lives, right? And
Right. Well, that was, yeah, no, that was mine. The one that I was connected to told me that it had been with me for over 100 lifetimes.
uh-huh.
And it was there on purpose, specifically to block the hierogamic, that trinity connection that happens within all of us. So it's specifically to block the merging of the masculine, feminine, and the activation of the golden child. So the golden child activation happened in June. And so I guess, that helps us discover some of these ways and entities and complexes, energy complexes that are actually set up in place to prevent us from that activation, that, becoming the Christ itself.
And in that session that you had, that first one, because I know there's a second one that occurred, or a second situation that occurred for you last night.
Yep.
But in that first one, and because I don't want to get it mixed up, but I think in that first one that you had one big one, which was identified as the Nephilim, and then there was, I think, 4 other little ones that went
three
with
other
it.
little three other little ones that went with it. So yeah, I'm so glad you said this, because an external energy complex or entity, they're all pretty much doing the same thing. One of the ones that came up for me was a man that was attached to me, who was a betrothed from centuries ago, who didn't get to marry me, and he wanted to protect me. I was a very, very fair woman or whatever. He wanted to protect me. He didn't get to marry me. So because we didn't get to do our wedding vows, he made a vow to himself that he would stay with me to protect me.
Mm.
And he told me in there, he said, that I believed that men were on this planet to protect me, and my experience has been that they've hurt me. And in that, oh my God, I felt the biggest shift. It was like, oh my goodness, just having this unconscious expectation or belief that men are here to protect you is going to create one of two things: either the opposite of that, where you're going to be harmed or hurt by men, or you're never going to be able to achieve this feeling of being protected by men, because it was actually a lie. Men are not here to protect women. Women actually have to take full responsibility and remember that they're there to protect themselves. So, these entities can come in different ways. Now, this man was absolutely in absolute bliss of being released from the contract that he had with me, that he'd made, and at some level, obviously, I had agreed to as well. It's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that you said too was that there were all these, let's just say, little contracts, like with this man that you were betrothed to, and a couple of other ones, and then what occurred for you last night, that there were these little ones that were basically secured and anchored by this Nephilim overlay, that in other words, the Nephilim overlay had to be released and neutralized before the other ones could.
Yeah, well, I didn't understand this until last night, but I believe that the Nephilim is the one that I was hooked into, or hooked into me, in both. And perhaps there's others. The Nephilim is the one that I actually was told about, and the one that's been speaking to me and took me through another process last night.
Yeah.
But you're right. They actually hooked into this original contract, and perhaps it is the Nephilim.
Well, I mean, for you it was the Nephilim, but I think even for the, if we go back to, 12,000, 15,000 years ago, and people such as Franco have referred to that point in time as we were heading into this last 15,000 period at the end of the cycle of cycles, where things got really amped up, and the 3D became inverted, right? And so, what I find so fascinating is that, this is a merging of the physical and the non-physical. These beings that were the parents, I'm sorry, these beings that ended up mating or raping, really, the human woman, that was never supposed to happen, right? And so through that insemination, this is where the hybridization started, and the thing I find fascinating is that it has physical properties,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, we talk about, in technology terms, nomenclature, computer terms or whatever, programs and all that stuff and motherboards and all that. But was a physical act. And I go back to that lucid dream I had a couple of years ago where we were in Lemuria. It was me, you, and a sister. And that's when they entered the realm. And that's when they took the women, killed the men. And that's where the process started. And these beings that were birthed, these Nephilim, and it's written about in detail in these sacred texts. And again, they have different names depending on what text it is. And this was the beginning of this massive distortion and hybridization and I don't say re-engineering, but the kind of the fuckery with the DNA and all that stuff and the strands being removed and all that stuff. This is all being done through this physical act, and I find that like hard evidence. That's physical evidence. We know
Yeah.
this happened.
And me too. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff, but all the work I do on my work is based on the human's programs, on the human's duality. Like I've always done that. I've never had anything to do with any external galactic interference, or it just hasn't been in my paradigm at all. So when I'm telling you about it and you're explaining the history of the Nephilim, I'm like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. When I had enough communication with that Nephilim energy, and what actually happened was I thought it was just one entity, but it showed me that it was part of a network. So I cleared as much of the network close to my field as I didn't. The Nephilim took showed me how it was connected in with other entities as well that were doing the same thing, part of Nephilim entities, and part of the network shifted out of my whole field. From the waist up, my whole body was shaking. It was an actual physical thing that I felt move. Now, in the last 3 days, I've actually noticed how different my thinking is. Like I'll get 2 or 3 words into a sentence or a thought, and it just stops, and I go, oh my goodness, that's not even true anymore. That's not real. That's not true. I mean, the changes in me just in the last few days have been so profound. It's been mind-blowing. But then it continued on last night.
Tell us about it.
So I knew I had travel today and I wanted to go, and I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. So finally at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to have to go to bed. So I went around the house, turned all the lights off, walked into my bedroom, closed the door, got to the end of my bed and got undressed, and I laid my clothes on the bed because they're really cold if I leave them on the floor. And I got paralyzed. I could not move. And I'm naked. I'm at the end of my bed. I'm 3 steps away from hopping into bed, and I was frozen. And my feet were like, I don't know, a foot apart. So I'm slightly, I'm not standing with my legs together, but slightly apart. And I could feel and hear this other voice. And I heard, and here's another one. And I went into, oh gosh, I don't know what to do. It's like, yes, you do. Yes, you do know what to do. You did it the other day. Just do that again. So I said to this entity, who are you? And this entity said to me, Uncle Normie. Now, Uncle Normie was my uncle who raped me, from 3 right through to 13. And I've done work over the years. I've got no emotion around it. I've got no mental around it. Like I've thought, like that's done. I don't have any bad thoughts with him or anything. Anyway, so Uncle Normie said to me, I said, why are you here? And he said, I'm attached to you, and it's time for us to separate. And he explained to me the attachment happened because of numerous things, his guilt and his shame of what he'd done to me, and my, I guess, blame or unforgiveness, which, I mean, I haven't felt for many, many years, but it was still there. He explained to me because of the baseline of the Nephilim was dissipated and no longer there, then he was now free to come to me to say, okay, this contract needs to be broken now too. We can come down to absolute neutrality and understand that both parties agreed to that part of the contract, which was code from the original Nephilim energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it happened because that Nephilim energy's been with me for over 100 years. So this was me saying yes to the sexual distortion, to the raping, to the sexual assault, like all that sort of stuff. So he explained all this to me and made it very clear of like, we don't need to be glued together anymore through my unforgiveness or blame or anything, or his guilt or shame. And I said, yes, absolutely, yes, let's go our separate ways. There was nothing. It was an absolute 0-point field. Todd, it felt like, and I don't know how to explain this, but it felt like there was a sock inside of my physical being that turned inside out and came up through my crown and just left me.
Wow.
And there is so much more, but it was probably one of the most, I mean, the one that I did, I think on Wednesday or Thursday, that Wednesday, God, what day was it? Thursday. I thought that was mind-blowing, but to actually bring it down to personal as well was a whole different ball game again. But I loved how he was stuck there with the programs and the codes that the Nephilim were playing out with me. At some level, it had become part of my personality, regardless of all the healing I've done around it.
Yeah. And three things, because I just remember, just so we make sure we cover it that way you told me. One is, we've all been feeling the body coming on the last year and a half, and speaking louder and becoming its own consciousness, and really the core of our multidimensionality and our human being and everything, as we're listening to it, and people's appetites are changing and dropping bad, addictions and etc. But that you cleared it in the mental, you cleared it in the emotional, etc. But it had not been cleared in the body; it was still in the physical body, and so that's one thing. And then another thing is the thing about the word contract, the contractual part of it. You had a contract with Normie, you had a contract with the other entities, and that was held down by the overlay of the Nephilim network that was specifically here to do the things that you're talking about. And so my question is, if Normie et al. Was in a contractual situation from a soul level with you, okay, then would not the Nephilim as a collective have been in a contract with us as humans?
Yeah. Yeah. And he let me know that I wasn't the only one. He came in with the coding to be that predator, to play that role. As I came in with the contract to be the other side of that, I guess the victim, and accept that role. One, because, well, it's a lot to do with Herius Gamos. Like we were not meant to allow our masculine feminine to merge and ignite the golden child. But the golden child's been ignited anyway. The masculine's going to be fully anchored and embodied and working with the sacred feminine, the golden child, by the end of September. And I was told last night, by the third week, I think it was 21st of October, everything changes. The whole of, like, all of us would have had, you know, a month or a few weeks to play with the fully trinitized energy operating, working together, unified as one.
Hmm. And just as a reminder, because we looked it up a while ago, because I remembered it. There's a sequence of 4 eclipses. I can't remember when the one was earlier this year. The first one
I
was
think you told me the 10th. I think you said
it's
the eclipse was
yeah,
the 14th.
the
No,
third
the
yeah
14th.
the third one is October the 14th. So that corridor, which is roughly 2 weeks, is falls in that period that you're talking about, that you're feeling that what you're describing will happen. The last one is in April, and that's the end of the 4 that people have been talking about. And there's an X in Texas where it overlays, and a lot of people know about that. But the other thing too was that was really intriguing to me was the specifics of what Normie, your uncle, told you about how everything worked. And for me, the biggest one was around forgiveness. And I think he said to you something to the effect, and you can correct me, where he said, when we have neutralized this, there will be no forgiveness, because it's beyond that. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah, he said when a contract is completely and utterly neutralized, the whole concept of forgiveness doesn't even exist.
Right. Which
And,
yeah, go ahead.
and that, I have understood that in my life. I mean, I thought many years ago I've forgiven him. I don't even think about him or anything. I mean, it was such a surprise and shock to see this. But if I look back at, what we've all been doing, we've all understood that these well, I got a few days ago, even before this happened, was that distractions eventually become addiction. So it seems like collectively we're all actually looking at distractions and addictions, and this whole, the Nephilim, and I'm saying Nephilim, but I don't know if there's others. Is it just the Nephilim, or are there other entities that do all this as well? But they come in and they actually put thought forms into your brain to encourage you. Oh, just one more time. Oh, I'll just have another one. Or just one more drink, or one more chocolate, or one more milk, or one more hour on Facebook, or whatever. That's how they do it, to keep us away from ourselves. So I've been off Facebook for 2 weeks. Not that I spent excessive time on Facebook, but I was on there, and I have loved not. I know what we were talking about. I was saying to you that they explained last night, like, once it finished, and it took about 25 hours standing there like that, 25 hours, 25 minutes, because once he was done, the other 2 men that raped me, they came out as well. It wasn't as big as Normie, but I mean, they didn't perpetrate as much as him, but they left my field as well. And then afterwards, when I laid down, they said to me, this is the gift of the 777. It's for more self-empowerment. It's to remove the distractions and the addictions. It's to understand, and be in charge and be responsible for the harvesting that's happening. Actually getting, yes, I agree to this contract. I'm part of it as well. Because when these things come up, I was told to ask, what is it giving to you, and what is it taking from you? And as soon as you understand those 2 things, that almost neutralizes the contract in itself. Understanding, well, you take from me, you give me, God, what's one of them? Pain. So if you've got an addiction to pain, you give me pain or emotional turmoil over, and you take life force from me. And it's like, as soon as you understand your own parts of, what you're gaining from it, and you treat this external thing with reverence and respect and gratitude, then they're actually free to break away from you.
Yeah.
And you feel it, like you actually feel it leaving your body.
That's wild and amazing. And the fact that this, whatever we're going to call this, activation, neutralization, whatever it is, that after it occurs, there's a true sense of neutrality. It's forgiveness is no longer in the field, because it doesn't even exist. And you're clear in a very physical way, that, like you're saying, you feel in the body. So this is going to be happening to other people. And then I go back to what Franco said, in, in the shows he did with us, as he talked about the history that he was involved with and that he was privy to, in kind of a macro micro, right? So basically what he said was that 15,000 years ago, as we started to approach the fall of Atlantis, and as we headed into this final stretch, this certain group of us, because we all have the consent, we all agree to what we're going to do beforehand. They came to us and said, why don't we make this really distorted, really wild and inverted? And that group was what we might call the Anunnaki or the Draco, or whatever you want to call it. And then they came down in the form that we've been talking about, in the physicality, and actually made this thing happen. And so what I'm saying is that, at the collective level, this is really just kind of a larger extrapolation of this individual experience that you're having and that others are going to have. And it was contractual. We were all players in this. There was a reason for it. And I think the thing that I'm really excited about is the fact that we will no longer have a charge for these things, and some of these narratives that keep us attached to the grid are going to be leaving, and there's going to be just a huge influx of light that emanates from us, right?
Absolutely. And then by doing this work, you're actually dismantling, distinguishing, collapsing the program within your own field that's actually not just your own program now, but taking responsibility for the external things that came in that were running. So you're not sending a signal out from your field of, I need more disrespect, or I need more trauma,
Right.
I need, any more of that. And the other great thing that happened too, by letting go of these distractions or addictions one by one, and actually being in your own solitude, there is no external. So you can actually start hearing your own voice, and then start really hearing the two voices. It becomes more obvious of what is coming in externally that is not of your own thinking, that you're having an internal conflict with. And that was the key to opening up this doorway of this possibility of, well, for me, the Nephilim. But they said to me last night that this was the gift of this 7/7 gateway, that it's opening that up for a possibility for all of us to really start collapsing these programs. And that by the 25th of this month, this will be done. It will be anchored, and it will be a new coding within the grid collectively. Like, we were all going to be doing this work in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, after we talked and decided to go ahead and do this, I got started getting like a big pain behind my left eye, and I started feeling really sick. So I can feel the energy moving out of me, or beginning to move, and then earlier today I had a show with Jesse Howell on the Missing Link, and we were talking about a lot of different things, and I was telling them about a very close family member sexually violating one of my children, and how I had just recently found out about it. And that, when I went into it and when I took it into myself, the first thing that I was shown was that they had a contract. And so that I talked about it a little bit more, but the reason I brought it up is because there was a lady in his community that made a comment and said that listening to what I was saying, and the word, I guess, contract was kind of the trigger, the activation. And she said in that moment that she realized, what I was saying, and she felt it, and released her own perpetrators. So there is, to me, you and those like you do pull in the information, and a lot of it is occurring in the body, and you're kind of like the weather vanes of what is coming, like the weather forecasters.
Well, Todd, and you imagine as every victim takes full responsibility for some of these things that have happened, by understanding that they were simply contracts, we're actually going to break down that the whole, gosh, I don't even know what you call it, the whole archetypal patterning of victim, perpetrator, and martyr energies. This is not going to exist in our new frequencies.
Yeah.
It's just not going to exist. I played a little bit with this, in the Wednesday groups. I guess I did. I must have done it on Tuesday. I started playing with, but I couldn't quite work out at that point. Okay, how do you do this in a group? But I understand now. Like after going through it with so much more clarity last night myself, it's this isn't going to be hard work.
Well, and I think that was another part of what you received too, which is typical with you and those like you, which is to then take it out and share it as the pure intel that it is now. Your groups have been gathering for like over a year, and I know sometimes you do special group gatherings that are open beyond the normal people that come and participate in your groups, and that the message being considering putting out the call for anyone that wants to neutralize this massive Nephilim program or template or whatever the hell you want to call it. And so I think it's worth putting out there to see if people would be interested in having a group gathering, because we know by now, not just with your groups, but other groups and gatherings that have started to occur around the world over the last few years, where we can put the group merging power of that, where two or more gather and connecting to all of our aspects and each other, and actually this is what what you and those like you do. I mean, you put it out there so that we can be presented with it and we can work through it, just like what's kind of happened to me right now, because I'm sweating like a dog all of a sudden and I feel like I'm gonna
Yeah,
vomit.
I mean, for some of us, you just have to hear it, and it's enough to activate this to happen within yourself. And with us, anything that I do and we talk about, it's like we match each other anyway.
Right.
But it's enough for some people to hear it and tune into it, and that's enough. And some people prefer to go through a process to actually find their own and remove their own. And it doesn't matter how we do it, but my understanding is this is happening. This is the gift of the 777 gateway. And it will be enough of us individually will do this work over the next couple of weeks, and it'll be fully anchored and embodied as new code into the new grid. In the groups, as we go into the grid ourselves. We set up all sacred geometry, do all this, and we become one and work as one. So there's this real cool gift that happens working as a group, because anything like if I've done this, so I'll bring the code to the group. This is done. Somebody else is, other people, individuals are going to bring in code as well. And everything that every single fractal of that group does for themselves is available and happening for all of us as one at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like being in a dual state of giving and receptivity, I mean.
Yeah. Well, we're all there consciously agreeing to do this cleanup together as one. I mean, it's like energy work on steroids.
Yeah.
I mean, one-on-ones are cool too, but energy work on steroids when you've got 10 or 20 or 30 people or however many all doing the same thing. I might be doing rape over here, somebody else might be doing violence, somebody else might be doing verbal abuse. It doesn't matter. Somebody might be doing this addiction or that addiction. It happens for all of us. Anything that we need in a group environment, the codes of the group are available for all of us.
Well, and it speaks to so many things. It speaks to what we know is almost like the physical evidence of our disempowerment, which is the root chakra, our sacred sexual energy, the sexual distortion. This is it. This is where the corruption began. This is where it all started. And then the other thing that you were talking about, which I think is something everybody can relate to, especially now as the collective consciousness is expanding, our awareness is expanding, which is the old saying of our imagination running wild. I mean, when you talk about distractions becoming addictions, I see that, even though it's not a cigarette or it's not a drink or it's not a sex or something that we identify more with addictions. But think of how many times we've gotten into a train of thought that was really creating a story in our head. And the fact that you have had these experiences with these entities that were so much a part of your field that you thought it was you. So that when they were talking to you, they were the ones saying, hey, just do one more. Or, hey, maybe this person is doing this to you, or that person's doing this to you, and our imagination running wild, and therefore we're projecting that in a quantum thought environment, and everything was being perpetuated. So this is huge. I mean, to me, this, if you look at the last 6,000 years of what we have of our history, and the stories that have been passed down, it's the same story over and over and over. And that's where it starts. It's on page 1 of the Bible,
Yeah, see, I don't know any of that stuff. That's where you come in so handy. I've never read the Bible. I've never studied any of that stuff. I've never known a single thing about galactic wars or anything. I mean, this was such a surprise and shock at the same time for this to come in so loudly, so hugely, and be ongoing. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there's another one or another one. But these thought forms that we think are ours, that it just goes a million miles an hour in your head. That's a thought form virus operating from an external, which has now become internal because it's actually become part of your field, that's actually talking you out of your thoughts, like love, your natural thoughts of being loving, or to yourself especially. That's the interference, and because there's a contract, they actually reside within your field with you. They become a part of your personality. And I look at this and I think, wow, how much of this could we put down to any of those mental, gosh, what I don't know, call them conditions, mental conditions, depression, or God, I don't even know what they all are. Depression, narcissism, bipolar, all of those things. How much of a role do these entities that are put in us on purpose to harvest our light, to harvest our energy? Some people call them demons, whatever they are, but they're real. And oh my goodness, that when they leave, that you can feel it in the body, and then in the mind, in the following days, you can feel the change. So my understanding is it may not be immediate. Like you might not wake up the next morning after oh my God, you might not have that, but next time, in the next days or weeks or whatever, that you say, okay, I'm not going to eat any more chocolate. It's your own free will that can actually follow through on that, because you don't have that thought form virus feeding you. No, have some more, because we want you to be dumbed down, zombified, disempowered. We do not want you to align with your light. I almost feel silly talking about this, because none of this has ever been in my field. This is a brand new thing for me.
I know. And this is, one other thing I don't want to forget too, because we had that situation, or that experience with the reptilians in early part of 2020, when they came in the room and they told us kind of the same thing that these entities said to you, and they were saying, hey, our work is done, it's time for us to leave, this was our role, we didn't always like it, but this is what we signed up to do. And I remember
they let us know that they were getting ready to leave. I mean, but that was it. I mean, it wasn't any personal experience I had with that, like this one.
Right.
That was just a channeling.
Yeah, but considering that that we're not linear and this is quantum, that in a sense happens, but I remember one thing that came through in the channeling. They said, I remember specifically, they said, we're leaving now because you, the human race or whatever, you have raised you're illuminating to a point now where we can't exist here. Right?
Yes, they did say that. They let me know that many, many individuals around the planet have already started this work. They have been doing it. And so they're losing power.
Yeah.
They're losing interest. They're actually tired. They're bored. They've had enough. They understood that it was a role that they had to play. The most exciting part of this for me has been not only how I felt myself and the release and the relief that I felt myself, but being aware of theirs as well, whether it was Normie or one of the other men, or the Epheleme, or an old betrothed, or, whatever it is. I felt their relief.
Right.
I watched them, return to light, or, become one with source again or something. It wasn't a one-way street, which I just find, talk about a win-win. I just find that amazing.
Well, and I think that to me, the most important takeaway for me is to reaffirm and understand. Okay, going back to the conversation you had with Normie, and he said to you, "I I would remain here with you until uh, he was attached there because of his shame and his guilt, and I think you said something else, and then you were bringing
Which then also
yeah,
becomes my shame and my guilt. He's a
right,
part of me now.
right,
So, I'm feeling shame and guilt about what happened to me as a child, not
right,
realizing it wasn't mine. I mean, I did
right,
heaps of work around that shame and
right,
guilt that you carry. But any shame and guilt that was left over was not necessarily mine. It was what he had attached himself to me through
right,
that shame and guilt. Through my blaming him or not forgiving him, we became stuck
right. And then and
in,
and
in a
then
contract.
and then to expand that a little bit, because we're going to be getting more and more of this information, and more stuff's going to come out. We don't have to get into the sexual distortion and the things that are, we talk pornography, trafficking, and all that stuff that we know is coming out now. But my point is that what I'm taking away is just reaffirming the fact that I cannot carry a charge with those that played these roles. So that's really important, because they were telling you that in essence, that if you still were hanging on to it, they couldn't leave, right? That
Yeah,
yeah. So as a
yeah. So
collective world, we'll have to do that. And as I've said over the years, I don't think it's going to come down to us chasing them down in the street and hanging them. I think it's going to we're going to be at a level of compassion and awareness where we understand everything from the perspective, and recognizing in reverence the contractual soul agreements that we made, and now that we've neutralized and released.
yeah,
So
yeah. I love the idea of it's actually collapsing that whole victim perpetrator program that's been a collective disempowering program for the whole of humanity.
yeah,
We're going to be doing this one by one individually for the
yeah,
next couple of weeks,
yeah,
and then it'll be completely anchored in body the codes of what life looks like without that in your field
yeah. And I
by
think
25th of July.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you said earlier before we got on was that we got a like a 2 week period here, where if we take these things on at a conscious level, and I'm kind of like, just summarizing, in my own way, but where we actually have a great opportunity to neutralize these things during this period, because
Yep.
it's on point. But I think the other thing too, and add anything you want to say, but just putting it out there, anybody out there that is interested in doing a group session, maybe this weekend or first part of the week or something, please put it in the comments. And if there's enough interest, then we'll put something together.
It would be easier for me if it's not in the comments, because I just got such a I haven't been told I'm allowed to go back on Facebook yet.
Okay.
So I don't know, sending me a message in Messenger or an email.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll definitely run it. I think I'm meant to be babysitting again Sunday night, but either Sunday night or Monday.
Uh-huh.
If there's enough interest, or if anyone's interested in actually looking at their own and clearing their own, certainly in a group environment, I'll definitely do it
Well,
if there's a warrant for it.
yeah. So what we can do is you can either message Morgan, you can email her, at where? Which one?
Zero pointing 369 at gmail.com.
Okay. And then I'm going to put this out on all of our platforms, on social media, as well as the network. And so I'll check, just in case anybody does, I'll check the comments on YouTube and the Facebook platforms, and we'll just gather the names with, anyone that contacts you directly, and anything else that we pick up on, if that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of doing this as a group, as a whole, whether there's 10 people or 20 or 30 or whatever, really excites me. I think as we start coming together in groups and doing this collective work, which is also personal. I mean, everything's personal and collective, but as we start doing it together, it really feels like energy work on steroids. It really does.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, that's the gift of the 7/7 gateway, from my understanding. Maybe there's others, I don't know, but that's what I've got so far. Is that we're being brought down to self-responsibility, including contracts or vows or agreements that we've made that are interfering in our energy far more than we've realized.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably where the term multiple personality came from.
Yeah, I mean, it
Seriously.
feels like it. My thoughts in the last 3 days, and I think I'm usually pretty clear, but my thoughts in the last 3 days, I can't believe how many times I just have a thought, I get 3 or 4 words into it, and I just, oh God, no, that's not
it.
true
Yeah.
anymore. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, when I did zero pointing, I had a lot of that, but I haven't had that sort of stuff for a long time. I mean, this is just so huge, huge.
Yeah. All right.
Mm.
Anything else?
No, I think we covered it. It's interesting. I don't know how long we've been on. I think we spoke for an hour while I was driving. I've pulled over to park before I
About
head
45
to.
minutes. About 45
Oh,
minutes
okay. Well, that's perfect.
to
Just
an hour. 45
fine.
minutes. So
We've probably.
it's 2:03, and I think we started about an hour, actually. About an hour. Okay. I get to go throw up now.